So in Cantonese, you say dumplings, gaoji, and in Mandarin, it's jiaozhi, or jiaoji, or jiaozhi. That's it, right? Yeah, I think I got it there. Today we are making jiaozhi, which is dumpling in Mandarin, or gaoji in Cantonese, as we call it. I'm super excited to show you how I've been making dumplings. So let's get to it. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. Growing up, I never actually made dumplings with my mom because my mom had to work a lot. There were always frozen dumplings. So like frozen dumplings from the grocery store, they'd come frozen, you know, you would fry them, you'd boil them. After I had homemade dumplings, I was like, where have you been all my life? Like, it was just so delicious and tasty, and it was unlike anything else. Hopefully this is something that you can do yourself. A lot of fun, and it's also very delicious. So these are the ingredients I used to make the dumpling. 2 pounds lean ground pork, half a pound Chinese chives, or they're also called Chinese leeks. And when you buy them in the grocery store, they look like this. What I would do is cut off the end of this, and then I would dice them pretty small, put them in a bowl like that. 1 pound shrimp that has been deshelled and deveined. Dumpling wrappers. Now in a pack of these dumpling wrappers, there's about 25 of them. Buy more of them because you don't want to run out of dumpling wrappers when you're making them. Keep in mind though, they freeze really well, so don't be worried if you buy too much. The last thing I use is about like an inch nub of fresh ginger right here. These are all approximated and they're all approximate quantities. You can play around with the recipe, you can add more or add less of other things. They are just dumplings, so really you have the freedom to make it your own. So what I do, it's kind of like a green onion. I would just cut off the ends here, just a small amount here, and I discard that, put it in the middle here. These parts are actually really annoying to cut. So with my ginger, I'm just going to take the peel off like this. Cut off the nub like that. Chop it really finely. So we're just going to do a rough chop of the shrimp, and you maybe like 1 shrimp like this would be about turned into 3 or 4 pieces. The ingredients ready to go. So these are the seasonings that we would add to the recipe. So this one here is Shaoxing wine, or rice wine, and we're going to use 2 tablespoons of that. And this goes into the shrimp in order to tenderize it. Fish sauce, we're going to add half a teaspoon of that. Soy sauce, and I'm using the light soy sauce because I want the meat to have a lighter color. I don't want it to be too dark. And I'm using 2 tablespoons of this. 3 teaspoons of white pepper, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. And cornstarch is used like a binder, kind of to tenderize the meat a little bit, and that's why I put it in the recipe. I'm gonna add my rice wine to my shrimp, and I'm using approximately 2 tablespoons. Now, I don't actually really measure anything, it's just approximate. So I'm just gonna pour it in like that, and then just stir it up, just to mix it up in the shrimp. So now we're going to create our filling. So we're gonna wait to add our shrimp. And the reason why we don't put our shrimp right away is because we want bigger chunks of shrimp. And so we don't wanna blend it all in with the other stuff first. I'm gonna leave that aside, and I'm gonna add that in later on. Now we're gonna add our seasoning. Start off here with my fish sauce, soy sauce, white pepper, cornstarch, salt. Grind it until the green is well incorporated into the pork. Everything is pretty nicely well incorporated. I'm going to add the shrimp in. Mix it up a little bit so that it's more well incorporated. Take a small spoonful of it, and I'm gonna put it into boiling water, doing a taste test. So once it's cooked, it's boiling water for about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm gonna taste it and see if it needs anything else, and then I will know how to adjust the recipe. While my taste test is going on and I've got the small piece of filling in the boiling water, I'm going to transfer this into my bowl. I don't want to mix it anymore in here because as you can tell, it's getting a little too incorporated. So what I'm going to do is, if I need to adjust flavors or not, I'm going to do it in this bowl here. The flavor was good, but I feel like it needs a little bit more. So I'm going to add a little bit more white pepper, a little bit more salt, and maybe a little more soy sauce in order to give it more flavor. And take a little bit of filling. This is the filling here. After I tasted it, it tastes pretty good. I put a little bit of a filling in the center here. When you're first starting out and you're doing this for the first time, it's really easiest to use a smaller amount of filling and not too much, because it's like a taco, right? You don't want to put too much in it because then like the whole thing kind of falls apart. Put my finger in water to moisten the edges of my dumpling. If you ever made pierogies or like empanadas, they're all pretty similar, and to me they're pretty much the same. It's just the fillings are different and like maybe spices are different. This is how I do it right there. So I wet the sides. So many different ways you can do it, and honestly my way is not really all that nice. It's all about the process. A lot of times when we look at photos on Instagram and food photos, everything looks so beautiful and Instagram worthy. It kind of makes people more intimidated to get into the kitchen to cook for themselves, surrounded by all these images of perfection. When really, probably a food stylist, when you watch cooking shows, there's a food stylist. And this is what I call the purse technique, or the flower technique, because it looks a bit like a flower. I'm gonna put it here on the side here. So you notice that I'm making all these dumplings on a baking sheet. This is how you would want to freeze them when you put them in the freezer. When you want to freeze them to package them individually, you want to make sure that all the dumplings don't stick together. I would put this in the freezer just like this once this whole thing has been filled. And once it's frozen, take it back out, portion out my dumplings into other Ziploc bags. And this way you can also make them into, eating portions if you want. I tend to make a lot of dumplings at once because it's so labor intensive that you want to make a lot and then you're going to freeze them so you can enjoy them later. I use some canola oil and I put it in the pan. Good for high heat cooking. Fry one side, get a nice browning on it. It's been about 3 to 4 minutes. There's a little bit of browning. See, you can tell, oh, look, they're brown. Actually, that one's a little bit burnt. They're a little bit burnt, but oh well. I think the pan is just a little bit too hot. Oh, you hear that sizzle? Now I'm gonna add a mixture I have of hot water, a teaspoon of cornstarch, and a teaspoon of flour. And what I'm doing is I make a skirt. Stir it together vigorously. I'm trying to dissolve all the cornstarch as much as I can, and now I'm gonna pour it in. It adds this really kind of nice crustiness to it that you sometimes will get if you go into a dumpling restaurant. Post a photo from my Instagram, and now I'm gonna cover it and let it cook like that. Okay, so it's getting close to being done, and you know this because the water is evaporating and it's bubbling a lot. Now the difference with making it with the skirt, which is the cornstarch, flour, and water mixture, is that you have to watch it really quickly because it can burn really, really quickly. So as soon as all the water has evaporated, you actually will find that, it'd be really quick to burn the starch. So do you see how there's this nice brown crustiness? This is what we want. This is what the dumpling looks like. As you can see, it's got some nice crispiness. It's got some nice browning right there. And I'm gonna eat it. This is a bit of the skirt we made there. And what happened was some of the juices from the dumplings came out and went into it, so it tastes really, really good. And normally what I would do is I'd also dip it in red vinegar or some kind of dumpling sauce, and that's how I would enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you learned something new today. Please be sure to give it a like, subscribe to my channel. I'm Jaelin, registered dietitian, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.